Now, before I actually met you and found out about your association, I never actually thought there was such a need for, you know, an association. I didn't realise there were refugees in North Cyprus. Let's find out about the Refugee Rights Association. How long have you been involved with the group?
We've been established in 2009 officially as a registered TRNC association, but our work has actually borne out the work of another NGO, which is the Turkish Cypriot Human Rights Foundation. And many of our colleagues has worked with the foundation, volunteered there, got involved in projects, etc. And during their work, they realized that there is a special need for professional help for refugees and asylum seekers. So they decided to set up the association. So we were established in 2009. And since 2010, we have become the UNHCR implementing partner. The UNHCR is the United Nations Refugee Agency. So it is the only agency who is responsible of all the refugee and asylum movement all around the globe. And we work in close cooperation with the UNHCR Cyprus office, which is of course situated in the south, but has a mandate of monitoring the refugee situation for the whole of the island. So we, as the implementing partner of the UNHCR, provide data and provide legal and social services to the refugees and asylum seekers with the support and cooperation of the UNHCR and of course the authorities here.
So it's a very interesting situation at the moment because you're working to see in North Cyprus who is really an official refugee or asylum seeker and who isn't.
Yes.
To be honest, I think that's just a very sort of a very blunt way of putting a difficult duty that you will have at the association. You are based in Lefkoşa.
Yes, in Arab Ahmet region.
How many people are you working at
We
this association?
are a team of 6 people, but 2 of our colleagues are part-time. So 4 people there full-time and 2 people as part-time officers. We have lawyers. I share some of the social assistance work with another colleague of mine. We have a public information officer who writes our press releases, contacts the press authorities, etc. And then of course we have a project coordinator who coordinates us, plans our work ahead, etc.
So your office is based in the old quarters of Lefkoşa.
Yes.
Which is not too far from everywhere. I mean, it's a nice area, and you know, you can easily cross the border to go to.
Yes.
You know, the main office is at, you know, United Nations and everything as well. So a very, very interesting, very important location in the capital. So let's now find out more about your work, because I want to ask you, how many refugees do we have? And if it's not too much of an effort to ask you, which countries do we have refugees from?
Sure. Actually, I would like to first touch upon the point that you mentioned about who is a refugee and who is not, and then we can go into numbers and figures. Because this is the common question that we get from Cypriots all the time. The reason for that is, first, of course, Cypriots themselves being a displaced community. And the term refugee has been used interchangeably for internal displacements, etc. Cypriots themselves are also confused because when we say refugees, sometimes they think that we're referring to people who had been displaced due to the troubles in this country. Some of them are now aware who is actually a refugee, etc. But a refugee is a person fleeing their home country and is in another country. So he or she is outside of the borders of his home country and is making a claim that his life is in danger because of his ethnic origin, religious beliefs, political activity, or a generalized situation of violence, internal war or an external war, etc. So these are the people who have a claim to be a refugee, and after the evaluation process, we in cooperation with UNHCR, but it's the UNHCR who makes the final decision, decide whether a person is a refugee or not. If we come to the numbers, Cyprus as an island is open for a lot of routes of migration. It's not only refugees, but we do receive economic migrants, we receive international students, expats, etc. In terms of refugee numbers, Northern Cyprus has a very low number. We are currently dealing with 66 people. Only 28 of them has completed their process and has been declared as refugees.
Right.
And the remaining 38 are still in the evaluation process, so we categorize them as asylum seekers. So they made a claim of asylum, but they have to wait a certain amount of period until their evaluation is made and a final decision is given. However, the protection that we request and we try to secure for these people is the same for both groups, for both asylum seekers and refugees, because, I mean, it's a little bit like a criminal court. We believe that everybody is a refugee until proven the opposite.
Right.
So it's a small number. The biggest nationality is, of course, the Syrians, naturally so, because Syria is a very close neighbor to us.
Yes.
And then we have Palestinians and Iranians. They usually prefer northern part of Cyprus for security, also due to religious reasons, North Cyprus being a majority Muslim country. And also we have a small group from Ivory Coast running from the ethnic violence there, ethnic and religious violence.
So even though the numbers aren't big, it's still significant work for you because, as you say, out of the 66 people on your list, only a certain percentage have been cleared. You still have to go through all the other people still waiting to get that official confirmation that they are a refugee or a asylum seeker. As you say, everyone is innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure, you have to assume that they are really here for legitimate reasons until you find out that no, it's not.
Yes.
Obviously, being an island, there's no borders to cross into Cyprus. And I think sometimes, if we look at the press, we always see that some people get on boats with the promise of going to another land and end up on the shores of North Cyprus.
Yes.
And of course, then most of the time they are arrested and they go through the court. So I'm sure you are dealing with the courts and the police quite a lot as well, aren't you?
Yes, we are. Because unfortunately in our country, the legal status of a refugee is not defined legally. So we do not have a law which decides who is a refugee and who is not. So for legal purposes, and because police officers are obliged to follow the law, they treat everyone who is coming with the boats or crossing from the south through military zones, etc., they're treating them as criminals because given the legal framework currently, it is a law for a policeman, so they have to do whatever they have to do. So what we do is we intervene in such cases. We have already established a close cooperation with the Ministry of Interior and the Directorate of Immigration. So they do allow these people to stay when we intervene and we support our intervention with UNHCR documents. However, the criminalization process is still on. So if they're caught and are already waiting for trial, they do go into trial. But what's been done at the moment is that usually these trial periods can last up to 6 months, maybe a year, but the police prepares the case quickly. So the process is shortened for people who have a claim for a refugee status.
Right.
So that's one of the problems. And for those who sometimes we may not be able to intervene or we may not be aware of the situation early enough, people are sent back, which is actually the biggest concern because in international law we have the principle of non-refoulement, which translates into not sending someone back.
Right.
And that is the cornerstone of an asylum and refugee system.
Right. So, for instance, if they were fleeing their country because of war,
yes,
and they have the right maybe to stay. They don't have to go back.
Yes.
You don't have to send them back.
Yes.
They have the right to stay and seek asylum.
Yes.
Or be a refugee in that new country that they have adopted.
Yeah.
So
seeking asylum is a human right.
It's a human right.
And if you send someone back and that person loses his life, or is tortured, or his fundamental human rights are violated, then you also share the responsibility of that violation, even though you are not the the primary person violating those rights.